Hey everybody, so it's been a couple of days since I did my last video, but had a few changes happen since then. I got a new dog, so I don't think you can see her, but she is right here by me right now. And I also moved into a new apartment, so it's been kind of a busy couple of weeks. But anyway, I wanted to get back to doing some videos here, and just on that note, like I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to start off with, so I decided to go back to kind of that whiteboarding challenge stuff that I was doing earlier. And for this one, I wanted to do the anagram checker. So basically, an anagram is where you take any word, and if you rearrange those letters, you make another word. And so if the other word is made up of the same letters as the first word, then it's an anagram. If they're made up of different letters, then it's not an anagram. So it's kind of one of those things that I've seen on a lot of the list for interview questions. And we did a few whiteboarding challenges like this also when I was going through my boot camp. So I figured I'd just kind of do one real quick. So as you can see on the screen here, what we're going to be doing today is just a real simple interface. It's going to let you type in a word. So for example, here, one of the classic ones would be taco cat. And if we spell that again, basically the word's the same front and back, right? I think we did this for the palindrome as well. But it'll be the same words, right? So it's going to be true because it's the same thing, obviously. If I take the A and the T here and reverse those, so it's ATC cat, it should still be true. But if I delete one of those T's, now it's going to come back as false. Now, what I'm returning here actually is a string, so you could make this, whatever you wanted. So you could have it say something else. I just did true false here for the sake of demonstration purposes, as we'll see here in a bit. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be creating is this today. Like I said, nothing really fancy with the CSS or anything. This is more about just the function itself. So to get started, what I've done is I've already kind of created the basic HTML here, and I'm just going to do it all in one HTML file using the style and the script tags here. So basically, I've already created the form, all that kind of good stuff there. So if I now go to um, this, if I type anything in here, it's not going to actually run because it's not connected to a function or anything yet. So what we will do is go ahead and minimize that back out and get back in here to the function. So a couple things we want to do first is I usually, when I'm doing a function, I don't normally start off with the DOM elements. So in this case, I've already actually built this. I added the DOM elements to it later. So what I'll do here is I'll just go ahead and start off with um, the basic function itself and kind of walk you through it, and then we'll connect it all up and everything. So um, what I did here is I started off with just by doing a function. Um, and in this case, it's going to be const, oops, anagram. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that take in two parameters. It's going to have word1 or W1 and W2. So basically the first word, second word. And then we're going to go ahead and just make that function set up here. So if I, for example, here, just want to make sure this is all working. We'll do a console log. It works. What's misspelled? Oh, am I not into the script tag? Wait, what happened there? Oh, it helps when I can type. I'm going to finish my second cup of coffee now while I'm thinking about it. Okay, so yeah. All right, so we're just going to run this. We're going to make sure this still works. So if we save that and then run down over here, if I pull back up this and I run this, why is it not running? Anagrams not defined because I haven't run that yet. Okay. Let me go back to the HTML process here. I think because I copied some stuff, it's not going to do what I want it to do. Oh, of course not. I'm never running the function. My bad. Okay, so we'll actually run the function. And now if we do that again, okay, now it works. Cool. Okay, so beginner mistake there. Alrighty, so let's see. So now we know that the function itself is connecting and it's all working and everything else too. Now the reason I do that, in this case, it's less relevant because I'm using only one file, but normally I would actually break this up into multiple files. So I would have a script file, a CSS file, and all that stuff too. And so I always wanted to just kind of double check before I even get started that the actual function is connecting correctly. Otherwise, it just save you a lot of troubleshooting later on. Okay, cool. So we got that taken care of now, so we know that's working. And now what we're going to do is a couple of things. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're using the same number of letters, right? So real quickly, we can check whatever our input is. And so in this case, I'm just going to do something like this. I will say, wow, and Bob. Okay, cool. So now the first letters or first word is going to be wow. The second word is going to be Bob, right? So we know that should not be an anagram. In fact, actually, even better yet, you know what? We'll do this instead. We'll do wow, wah. All right, so we'll put an extra W in there. So what we're going to do now, just test this, is we're going to make sure that if there are a different number of letters in the two words, they're not anagrams. So we're going to run a real quick if statement right off the bat. I'm just going to say if the length of the first word is not equal to the length of the second word, then we want it to basically return back that it's not an anagram, right? So it's going to be false. So what we'll do here is we'll say is anagram equals false. Okay, so now the reason why I'm doing that is, and actually then we're going to do a return, so that way we just end that function right there. So, okay, so what we're doing here basically, and the reason I use this anagram also up here is in a second, I'm going to actually create some variables for is anagram, all that kind of stuff. So what we'll do here is I will say let is anagram, and we'll set that initially is equal to, in this case, true. But again, I'm using a string, not a Boolean value here. So you know, if I was doing this, then for example, it would be a true false Boolean. But since I'm doing it as a string, I could do something different. So I could say, I don't know, true, this is an anagram, or something like that. And so I'll get that instead. Or I could say something like false is not an anagram. So cool. Alrighty, so now what's going to happen here, and actually instead of doing the before I do the return, I'm just going to do this just to kind of show what it'll do here. We're going to do a console log is anagram, right? So what we're going to do here is, in this case, we know that the parameters I'm passing into this are not anagrams, right? So wow and wow is not an anagram. So when we run this function, which it should run on page load, we should get in the console false, this is not an anagram. So if I save that and then I pull this back up, wow, it's not defined. Oh, because I did not use those as strings. So let's fix that. Okay, so let's try that again. Awesome, cool. So now we have false is not an anagram. If I go back in here again though, and I change this to now wow, so now the same thing. And actually, just to make it a little bit different here, let's do this. Let's do WW. All right, so we have two W's and one O in this case, and they're all three letters or three characters long. So if I do that and then we save this, we should actually now, instead of this, what we'll do here is, instead of that, I'll do an else here, else, just to make sure. Is anagram. Alrighty, so now when I run this, it should say this is true, right? Because the things that we're doing were the same letters. And again, this isn't connected to anything yet. So, all right, cool. So now let's double check that again. Let's go ahead and change this to something different. Save that, and now it should tell me that it's false. Cool. All right, sweet. So we're getting now something that'll check to see if the two words have the same number of characters in them. So that's the first step, right? So we can pretty much guarantee that if a word has more letters or less letters than the other word, it's not an anagram. So now though, we want to say is, let's say we have something where the words are the same. In this case, what I'm going to do is, instead of that, we're just going to, outside of that if statement, we're going to do a for loop. And basically what we're going to do here is we're going to just iterate over all the different characters in this. So we're going to set this up first. Or actually, before we do that, let's do this. Let's make some characters here. So we're going to say in here, well, actually, we can do it inside of the function itself if we need to. So, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say here, we're going to say first, so we'll say let first equal w1 dot split. So that's going to turn this into an array, and then we are going to sort that. So when we iterate over it this way, it's going to basically make sure that the letters are in the same spot for both, right? So what happens if it is split it, and let's say, well, for how I'm going to check it, you'll see it in a second. But basically, when you iterate over, I'm just going to check to say, okay, is this letter for the first word the same, or do these two letters here, so does this one and this one, let's do this. Just to kind of visualize here. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to loop over each one of these one at a time. We're going to say, is the letter here for the first word the same as letter here, or sorry, character here, is the same character here, the same character as there is for here. And then we're going to go to the next index, and we're going to say, okay, for word 1 is the character at index 1 the same as the character for word 2 at index 2, so on and so forth. So if we split it though, if I have something like this, what'll happen is, if we don't do the sort, it's going to then look at this and it'll say, okay, cool, the first letter is the same. Oh, but look, the second letter is not the same. So it's going to come back as not being an anagram, even though it actually is. So in order to make sure that we're comparing the same letters as they would be, we're going to go ahead and do a sort, and that's going to basically put these characters in alphabetical order. And since we run it on both, it's going to have the same sort result for both of the words that we're using. So you'll see it a little bit here in action here. So we'll say second equal w2 dot split, and then dot sort. Okay, so we'll get that there. So now if I was to just console log this, let's just console first and second, we should get the same result for both of these. So yeah, so we start off with O and then WW, right? But if I don't do the sort, like we mentioned earlier, let's just say I get rid of that. Then what's going to happen here is you'll see that we get a slightly different order in the array, right? So, so this would come back as not being an anagram, even though it actually is. So to prevent that, like I said, we're going to put that dot sort on the end. And then as a result, we will get arrays that we can compare properly there. So cool. So that's what we're doing there. And let's see. Okay, so basically now we are taking in these two arguments here as W1, W2. We're now going to split these and sort them so that we have arrays we can iterate over using a for loop. So now we'll go ahead and make that for loop here. So for this, we're just going to do for let I equal 0, and then the course semicolon, and then this, and then we'll say first. And again, we're only going to be hitting this if we already know that the links are the same, so it doesn't really matter which of these two that I use. I could do first or second here, but I'm just going to go ahead and do first in this case, and then we will just iterate I by 1 each time we loop through. So, okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're just going to say an if statement. So we're going to say if, oops, in capitals for some reason, if the first dot I is, I'm sorry, not equal to second at I. So what we're doing here is we're just saying, okay, let's check to see if the first character in the first word, or well, the character at I in the first word, if it's not equal to the second character at I, or I'm sorry, the second word character at I. And you could also use char at and some other things too. I just did it this way. Again, there's always going to be multiple ways to do this. I just kind of did this also as practice for a for loop and manipulating arrays. But there are definitely other options there as well. So this is just one way of doing it. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to say, all right, if these two are ever not equal. So basically, as it's looping over, this is going to say, if I ever get to a place where these characters are not the same, then I immediately want to return false and stop the function. So what I'll do here is I will just say we will set the is anagram back to this false. This is not an anagram. And immediately return, all right? So again, we're just gonna check this. If I ever hit a place where these two are not the same, then it's going to immediately just say, all right, set the is anagram to false, it's not an anagram, and then return to basically break out of this. However, if I do not run across a situation where this is the case, then I will want to return I will set that to true. And again, I will return. And we will go from there. So, okay, so what I'm doing here now is basically first taking whatever W1 and W2 are, right? So the first, second arguments here. Whatever W1, W2 is, I'm splitting those and then sorting it so that I have two arrays that basically would be in the same order. I'm then checking to see immediately if the links of these two arrays are the same. If they're not, then it's not an anagram. We're setting as anagram to this. And in this case, we're console logging, which I can actually just do that here and here. And then returning to basically stop that function from running anymore. However, if this is not triggered, so if it goes through and they are the same length, then it's going to hit this for loop. And then it hits the for loop. It's going to say, all right, cool, let's iterate through all of this. At any point, if while I'm iterating through this, these two characters do not match at their associated I positions, again, not an anagram, console log that, return, break out of the function. If none of these occur, go ahead and set that to this, console log as anagram. In fact, I actually don't even probably need this here. All right, because we're never actually changing it in this case. So then we just console log as anagram, and we go from there. So what I should get now, if I save all of this and I check it, is when I come here to my browser, and I should have this being an anagram. But if I change this to something else, like, I don't know, fish, and we save that, now I should get that it is not an anagram. Cool. All right, so we have that working more or less here, it looks like. So I'll just kind of check. We'll say fish with an E on the end. I hope that doesn't mean anything in any other languages. I don't think it does, but, and we do that. So it's not an anagram again because the links are different. So, all right. So cool. So we now have a function that is working to solve this. So now what I want to do is I want to actually have it where all of this connects to this, so that way I can use those input fields to check to see things are anagrams, right? So instead of having to put it in here, I want to take a value that I type in and pass those in as my arguments for word 1 and word 2. So to do that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first, we want to have it so that when I click a button, it runs this function, but it doesn't run any of this stuff until I actually click it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to wrap all of this inside of another function. And let's say we'll make this anagram because I named that up here. And again, this is not going to take any arguments because all this is doing is just running once. Once I triggered this. So now what I'm going to do here though is instead of these, I'm going to create some variables, and we're going to call the first variable word 1, and we're going to call the second one word 2. Okay, so now we have word 1 and word 2. And let's go and do this here so you can see a little better. Okay. And I did that with a copy instead of a cut. All right, cool. So now I've got this. So now this function should only run once I actually click the button here, right? So I already have this written, which is why I went ahead and made the function run as anagram. So I wanted to run it through this here, right? So now what I'm going to do is just to test that, we'll actually make this into a string instead of a variable for a second. And I'm going to go back over here, and when I run this, you see there's nothing in the console yet. However, if I do that, it's going to run back to false. This is not an anagram because again, those two words are different. So cool. So now we have it set up for that. I'll go ahead and bring those back to variables instead of this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create the word 1 and the word 2. So inside the anagram, what we're going to do is when we run this, we're going to immediately want to get some things. So we're going to say let, in this case, I'm just going to say first word. And we'll have that equal document.get element by ID. And what I did up here is I used first input, right? So basically I want to get whatever is inside of this first input here. Okay. And that is going to be input. And then we want the value of whatever that is. So we're going to do document.getElement by ID, first input, which is this first input up here for the first word, and then the value of that. So it's going to be whatever is inside of that. Now to just make it a little bit quicker here, I'm just going to copy this for the second word, and we will say second word. And we'll make that second input dot value. Cool. Alrighty, so now when I do this, these should be getting passed into, and actually, you know what? I can just do this instead. I don't need to do this, but I can just do first word and second word. Okay, so when I run this now, it's going to immediately look for these. It's going to pass those in here as the arguments, and then it should do what we want it to do here. So it should then, take this in, first word should become W1, second word should become W2. Those should then get split, and it should run this as a result of all of that. So let's just try this and see what happens. Okay, so if I run this and I type in fish and I type in smell because fish smell. It's not an anagram, but if I type in fish, okay, it's looking at me. This is not an anagram. Why is it doing that? Let's see. Okay. Because you should be doing that. Do I need to do a clear or something? Okay, well, you know what? We will just do this instead. So we're going to take this, we're going to clear that out. We're going to put it up here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do first and second. And instead of W1, we're going to say first word. Second word split. Okay, and then it goes get passed in. So now it's going to pass in those already as the arrays. Let's see. And then we'll immediately iterate through those. Okay, there we go. That's odd. Okay, so for whatever reason, it wasn't taking that where I thought it would, but it's taking it now, so that's cool. All right. Why are you telling me that's not an anagram? Okay, let's see. Sort. Oh, of course, of course. Sometimes I do weird things. Okay, so what I forgot to do here, because so what I want to do basically is what's happening. The reason why, even though I'm changing it back now to a word that is an anagram, it's rerunning that again, but it's already set the is anagram up here to this value, and it's not changing it back again. So I do want to actually, just if I can do it multiple times, I want to change that to is anagram. Okay, there we go. That's what I was missing. And see, now this should actually work. Okay, so let's do that again. So what happens is I'm talking while I'm trying to do these things. So I do apologize. Okay, true, this is an anagram, and then this is not an anagram, and I change it back to fish, and we should get true. Okay, cool. All right, so that was the problem there, is that it wasn't ever changing it back once it had been changed to false. So, okay, now it is, so we are good there. All right, cool. So now the next step is, instead of console logging this, I just want to display in the browser what the actual result is. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to display HTML, and that's going to be is anagram. Okay, so the display here I'm going to call right now. So we will say this. We'll make that let display equal D, and that is going to be answer display. And actually, I can set up here. Document owned by ID, and actually that's going to be a const, because I'm not going to be changing that. Okay. Cool. All right, so now it should run that function before it displays the is anagram, and this should only get displayed if after I click the button to run the function. So let's make sure we're saved. Saved, cool. And over here, I run this, it's not displaying it. Is anagram true? This is an anagram. Great, it's showing up down here. And if I say fishy, false is non-anagram, I change it back to fish. True is an anagram. Awesome. So now we can just kind of check some different words here. Toko, and we'll say taco. False, good. And if I change that to taco, tacos, false. Oh, excellent. So cool. So there we have it. So we have an anagram checker now. Again, the bulk of this is not really the HTML stuff here. It's pretty much just this function here, which is why I wrote it in two separate functions. I could have combined a lot of this into one function if I wanted to, but basically this is where the bulk of the logic is coming from. All this is doing is basically just running this and setting up these variables here once I click the button in the HTML. So that is pretty much how we would do a anagram thing. So again, depending on how far you wanted to go, you could just do this portion here if you wanted to, and do the console logs to get it that way, or if you wanted to actually have it display in HTML and have it connected to a form or an input, then you would add these other aspects to it here. So that is it for the anagram checker. Yeah, so like I said, I know it's been a while since I did a video, and this one's a little bit rough, but like I said, I'm a little just out of practice right now, and I'm exhausted from moving and all that good stuff. So but hopefully I will be back with some new videos a little bit more regularly now, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.